Under Joe Massino, the Bonanno family was in the process of restoring their tarnished reputation, as well as rebuilding the family's foundation by means of structure, enforcing rules, and reasserting their position among the five families. Nevertheless, a domino effect of cooperators would ultimately topple the Bonanno leadership, with Frank Coppa being the lead domino. Frank Coppa hailed from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and would also live in Dyker Heights, Staten Island, and Leyden, New Jersey. Growing up, he held legitimate jobs like working in a grocery store, driving a truck, and even waiting on tables. According to the New York Division of Gaming Enforcement, Coppa's arrest record dates back to 1962. By age 19, he was arrested for an attempted burglary. One of his neighborhood friends and crime partners was Frank Lino. The pair committed burglaries, hijackings, and numerous crimes together. In fact, they were involved in drug trafficking in the infamous Marlboro Projects in Brooklyn, basically taxing local drug dealers in the area. Being from Bensonhurst, Coppa was friendly with members of several families of the New York Mafia, but would gravitate towards the Banano family, as did Frank Lino. At some point, he began staying in Williamsburg and Bushwick sections of Brooklyn and became acquainted with the crew around Carmine Galante. In 1977, Coppa was inducted into the Bonanno family in a ceremony conducted by Galante. With him that day were fellow inductees Baldessaro Amato, Cesare Bonventre, and John Palazzolo. Around the same time, he was introduced to Joe Massino by fellow member Matteo Valvo, who happened to be Massino's captain. They met at the Parakeet restaurant located at the Fulton Fish Market. Soon after, Coppa learned that Massino was a rising star in the family and one very close to boss Rusty Rastelli. He would eventually start giving Massino $1,000 a month out of his earnings. And Coppa was earning a ton of money. He was involved in the stock market and had a 1979 conviction for stock fraud. He had been associated to several brokerage firms in both New York and New Jersey since the early 70s. He also made money through his hijackings, loan sharking, extortion, etc. In mid-1978, Coppa was almost killed in an attempted car bombing. Apparently, his former friend and Staten Island neighbor, Anthony Cogliatore, had given Coppa $4,000 to invest in stocks, but that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and Coppa never gave the money back nor mentioned it again. Cogliatore was pissed because he would see Coppa living very well and driving a Mercedes. So he approached him one day and demanded his money. Shortly after this incident, Coppa was out in Staten Island, and when going to get back into his car, there was an explosion that took place. Luckily for him, he only suffered third-degree burns, as well as shrapnel wounds, but he was rushed to the hospital and survived. While at the hospital, he was visited by Frank Lino and other members of the Bonannos. They narrowed down a list of suspects to Cogliatore. Several meetings took place over the attempt on Coppa. The Bonannos couldn't let one of their members almost be killed without retaliating. On December 28, 1978, a Bonanno hit team, including Lino and Palazzolo, who was the backup shooter, approached Cogliatore as he was about to exit his car in his driveway and shot at him 11 times. I believe he was only hit by 5 of those bullets, and he too survived his injuries. And he would go on to write a book about the incident. Coincidentally, when Coppa began cooperating, he told the FBI that he later learned Genovese member Gerard Papa might have been involved in the car bomb. Papa had killed the son-in-law of one of Coppa's associates and believed that Coppa would retaliate against him. So Cogliatore, who was almost killed, might have been innocent. In 1979, Coppa was arrested in a pump-and-dump stock scheme, but only received supervised release. During that same year, the Bonanno family was dealing with internal strife, which led up to the shooting and death of Carmine Galante on July 12, 1979. Following the Galante hit, the family became factioned off by those loyal to boss Rusty Rastelli and 3 of their captains, Sonny Red Indelicato, Dominic Trinchera, and Philip Giacone. Members of the Rastelli faction, including Massino and Captain Sonny Black Napolitano, took the opposing captains out on May 5, 1981. Sonny Black would subsequently be killed as well, and on that day, August 17, 1981, it was Coppa who greeted him at the door of the Staten Island house in which he was killed in. Fast forward to 1991, the year Rusty Rastelli died. Joe Messino, who was in prison at the time, became the official boss of the family. Over time, Messino and Coppa became very close and began spending a lot of time together, eating in restaurants and even vacationing with their wives, all trips which were paid for by Coppa. On one such trip to Monte Carlo, Messino explained in detail to Coppa what took place with the murders of the three captains. Messino recognized Coppa's earning capabilities, most made through stock fraud, and besides his illegally earned money, Coppa owned a bus company, parking garages, vending machines, and restaurants. According to Coppa, he kicked up millions of dollars to Messino from his loan sharking business alone. And that was aside from the $20,000 that he would put every year in a Christmas envelope. In 1992, Coppa was convicted for tax evasion due to concealing income from the bus company named My Three Sons that he and his family owned. Frank Coppa was a big guy, 6'2" and upwards to 300 pounds. Someone who was always dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, and in the winter months wore a short mink jacket. He also was known to have a take-charge personality. For example, he always smoked cigars and didn't care about places with a no-smoking policy. Messino definitely held Coppa in high regard because not only did he make him a captain, but he also placed him on a Banano panel that he put in place. In March of 2000, Coppa and 18 others were indicted for multiple crimes. Among them was conspiracy to commit securities fraud as well as large-scale stock frauds. From 1993 to 1996, Coppa and others, including Frank Lino, were involved in pump-and-dump stock schemes where investors lost over $40 million. He pleaded guilty in September 2001 in exchange for a 3-year sentence. The following year, in October 2002, Coppa was indicted again for 3 counts of extortion. At the time, he was in Fort Dix, serving out the remainder of his 3-year sentence. He had his lawyer contact the FBI and let them know that he wanted to cooperate. He was immediately moved from Fort Dix to the Federal Detention Center for Cooperators in Jamaica, Queens. Coppa was able to provide the government with the inner workings of the Bonanno family. In addition, he gave up the location of where the 3 captains were buried, in the hole in Lindenwood, Queens. As part of his cooperation agreement, he was able to keep $1.7 million in assets, as well as a Florida townhouse, and pled guilty to 1 count of a racketeering conspiracy. Let me quickly mention the Super Thanks icon found beneath this video in the 3-dot dropdown for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this. And thank you. At 6 a.m. on January 9, 2003, the FBI went to Joe Messino's house, and he was expecting them. While driving in the car with the agents, he told them Frankie Coppa got to work quick, letting the agents know he was aware one of his captains was cooperating. During Joe Messino's trial, on the day Frank Coppa was scheduled to testify, Frank Coppa Jr., who followed his father into the Banano family, showed up in court. He was standing behind the Banano family and obviously disappointed in his father's cooperation. It was a move that was played out in the movie The Godfather when Frank Pantangeli, who was testifying before a committee, looked over his shoulder and seen Michael Corleone showed up in court with his brother to discourage him from testifying. It worked in the movie The Godfather, but not for Messino, as Coppa testified anyway. Frank Coppa wasn't sentenced until November 2014 due to his continuing to assist prosecutors, and he received time served. According to Assistant U.S. Attorney Amy Busa, Coppa's cooperation was the first major development in a series of prosecutions which, during their course, resulted in the indictment of virtually every high-ranking member of the Banano family.